Good morning, class. We're starting a new week in our digital learning. So the way things are looking, I guess we're in this digital learning thing for the long haul. So let me go over just the way things are gonna go. So we have the rest of this week, and then next week would have been a short week for you guys. You would have only had 4 days, but that's because that's the end of the quarter. So, and then we would have spring break. So the way things are looking, we won't have school at least through spring break, and after that, I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine. So let's just prepare for the end of this quarter being all online. So with that being said, so we are scheduled to take our test on either the 30th or 31st, depending on whether you're an A or a B day. So again, prepare for just like the last test we did. It'll all be online, so it'll all be whatever notes that you have. Later on in the week, I'll give you some a review sheet, just like I did last time with the major topics. But basically, it's everything we've covered in this digital portion is what will be on that test. And so then we'll have two major tests, and all of the stuff that we've done online will constitute your grade for the third quarter. And what the fourth quarter is like, again, we'll have to see. Hopefully things calm down in the next, so would that be what, three weeks. So again, I'll have a Google form, and so since that's the end of the quarter, and I had to have grades in, I'll have to be pretty strict on getting that testing to me. So if you have any issues with technology or access to technology, get with me and let me know so that I can be prepared for that. Again, so what I'll do is on Monday, I'll send out the Google form to everybody, and so again, you'll have 48 hours to complete that. So so that would, like, if you're an A day, that would give you really to the end of the week to be practical. So if I open up the test on Monday, you'll have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Those would be 3 school days, and then if you absolutely have to, that Thursday, which would be a work day, if you got the test to me then, I would accept it. So, but after that, I'm really gonna have to cut it off, and we'll have to again, if you're having trouble getting access to technology, don't forget that if your parents contact the school, they can loan you out some of our laptops. So if technology is really an issue, get with me and we can see what we can work out. But so I think that most people with those number of days, you can finish the test. Again, the test is not going to be, it would not last more than one class period. 90 minutes, 85 minutes is as long as the test would take. So I know some people have issues with, they have to wait till the parents get home so they can get online. So even if you have to do it the next day or in the evening, just so that's why I'm giving you these dates now, so that if you need to make arrangements, I know some people are fighting with siblings over access to the internet. So, and I'll send your parents a message too, letting them know that on the 30th or the 31st that you really need to have access to the internet so you can take this test. Okay, that's some of the old business. Just some of the new business. So again, since it looks like we're in this digital thing for the long haul, we need to just start setting up some routines. Hopefully everybody's caught up with stuff that they're due, and the school is wanting me to start to get strict on turning in stuff. Again, I'm aware that some people have issues with technology, and I'll address that in a minute. So the one thing the school wants us to start doing is getting back on the A-B schedule. And I know the way I've been doing it is I've basically taken the A and B day and put it into one presentation just because that was easier for me and probably less confusing, I hope, than just sending out one mass email with all the information. But since they want us to start, especially if we're going to be doing this for a long time, start getting on an A-B schedule, because I don't want some of you that have maybe a lot of classes on your A day, I don't want to add another class on top of that. So to try to keep things balanced between A and B day, what I'm going to do is I'll still, for all the classes, I'll just send it out on the first day, the A day, but I'll leave the due dates like normally you would have 48 hours to turn in your stuff, which would be by the next class period if we were in class. But since so to make it equitable so that the A day is not getting more time than the B day or vice versa, what I will do is I will make the due date 3 days from the time that I give the presentation. So that will give, whether you're on an A or B day, that will still give you 48 hours from the time that we would have had a class to complete your work. So that covers the A day, B day difference. So hopefully that that helps out, and again I'm gonna have to start even so after that third day, after that 72 hours after I've given the information, that's when the stuff is due. So I'm gonna have to start docking I'll points off for it being late. So I think that 72 hours is equitable. It gives you time, for again the difference between A and B day. Plus, I know some people have, like I said, access to technology issues. So I think giving 3 days is enough time to address that. So that's going to be the new norm going forward for as long as we're doing this digital stuff. If there is anybody that does have problems with technology, let me know. It's better to let me know ahead of time. I can anticipate it, and we can figure out a workaround. Okay, so again, always contact me. I'm as you can probably tell, even teachers get to go home now, but so I will still be available all day on the chat. I'll be monitoring that all day. It's a normal work day for me. Even though I'm at home, I'll still be at work doing this stuff. So I'll be monitoring the chat all day. So if you have any questions, always ask me about that. So again, the go-to is Schoology for right now. Everything will always be on Schoology. Myself and probably most of your teachers are now trying to go to a Google Classroom format. I know the math department, Mr. Stone for the 6th graders is going to Google Classroom. I'm going to start going towards it, but we are almost 3/4 of the way through the year. and it's taken this long just to get most people to look to Schoology. So I will always have everything on Schoology, even if I do start to try to use Google Classroom as a better way to communicate both to you and to your parents, because your parents can be invited into the Google Classroom as well, and they can see assignments and calendars and all that stuff. So that is a much better format, and for those that come back with us next year, probably I would think that most of your teachers are going to go on to Google Classroom, so that's a good format to get used to. So with all of that, we've gone 10 minutes here just on old business. So what are we going to do today? So again, hopefully if you're seeing this video, you've gone to the Schoology site, and also check your school email. There should be two documents that you should receive. The first one should be a Google document that has the lab for today. So we'll talk about that lab in a minute, but that has all the instructions on it. You should also have received a Google form, and that form is where you're going to submit your answers. So what are we going to do today? So let's think about what have we been talking about since we've gone digital and this whole unit. So we started talking about fossils. Then we were talking about how people were noticing things about fossils. We figured out in the last test, we were talking about how do we date fossils. So as paleontologists and scientists were looking at these fossils, they noticed that there were similarities between them. And then the very last activity we did before the shutdown, we were talking about the comparative embryology activity. So scientists noticed that among the embryos, or the small developing of various animals, that they were very similar. If you remember from that activity, the very earliest picture was really hard to tell what was the difference between a human, a tadpole, a turtle, because most of the body forms were very, very similar. So that's what was leading up to this whole evolution thing that we're talking about. So after the comparative embryology, we started talking about this is where we did the Punnett squares. So, and we skipped a whole bunch of stuff that you'll get, like I was saying, next year in 7th grade science and further on in biology. But just to introduce you, we were talking about these alleles and these genes and how do they mix up together, and that's a really deep question. So I know some people probably got confused. You noticed when we did those Punnett squares, there was 2 letters for each trait, and we said some of them are dominant, some are recessive. At this point, all you need to know is that each one of those letters, you get 1 letter from your father and 1 from your mother. And how that happens, again, you're going to need to go more in depth into reproduction, how the genes get shuffled. You'll need to know more about cell division, mitosis, meiosis, some of these things that you'll keep exploring in the next couple years, and then get really in depth into it into biology. So what we're doing this year is just really surface, just hitting the big topics on the surface. So If some of that is confusing and frustrating, I feel your pain. I don't like, when I was in college, I didn't like what they call survey courses, where it's just, hitting the surface, because each one of those topics I wanted to go into in depth. And so I feel your pain on that, but we do what we have to do. So all you need to know with the Punnett squares is you get one letter from each of the parents. It may be the capital letter, it may be the lowercase letter, it may be both capitals or both lowercase. and so then we explored how there are these traits that are called recessive. And the only way recessive genes can be expressed is if both parents have that recessive gene. And we saw the classic example was blue eyes. So in order, since say brown eyes is most of the planet, people have brown eyes because brown is the dominant trait. So in order to have blue eyes, you have to have both parents have recessive traits. Now, how does that happen? We saw one example is where both parents have the recessive trait, and then you can have the children will have that recessive trait. But you could also have a one parent that has brown eyes and the other parent has, say, blue eyes, and you could still have a blue-eyed child. It doesn't happen as often, but it all depends on whether that parent is, some of them fancy words I use, whether it was homozygous or heterozygous. Homozygous means the same. So if they're homozygous dominant, it means that both letters were the same, both capital letters. And if they were heterozygous, that meant they had one capital and one lowercase. So in that case, we saw that with, say you have one parent that had the recessive gene, and one parent had the dominant gene, but they were a carrier for the recessive gene. In that case, it is possible to have children blue eyes, even though one parent is dominant brown-eyed. So, where are we going with this whole thing? So, we're getting ready to talk about more in depth in evolution. And how do these recessive traits happen? So, one of the thoughts for evolution is a slow change over time. Remember we were talking about the geologic time, that is really, really, really long. So these traits develop over a long period of time, thousands and thousands of years. So today's activity, we're going to talk about the opposable thumb. So opposable means your thumb can oppose the rest of your fingers. Most animals don't have opposable thumbs. And so the way evolution works is there's all these mutations. So opposable thumbs is a mutation. All of the things that make us human that benefits us are mutations. So some mutations are good, some mutations are bad. So evolution says that if a mutation benefits a species, then that mutation can get passed off to the descendants. So say opposable thumbs. If having an opposable thumb benefits me and it lets me eat more, protect myself, do all these things to benefit me, it means I'm going to survive, and eventually that means if I survive, I could eventually have offspring, and hopefully some of those offspring will have that mutation too. Not necessarily all of them, like we saw with the Punnett square. You could have, so if this was a recessive trait, not necessarily all of my children would have that recessive trait, but there might be enough of them if I have, not only me, but if there's a bunch of other people who have this mutation, there may be enough of us that have this mutation that we tend to survive better. If I can use my opposable thumbs to get food, then that means I'm going to survive. Somebody who doesn't have opposable thumb, it might be harder for them to get food. So people with opposable thumbs would tend to survive more. And that's the whole basis of, if you've heard in evolution, the survival of the fittest. Well, opposable thumbs that makes me more fit. It's not the strongest, because the dinosaurs were the strongest and they're not here, because although they were the strongest, they weren't the fittest because they couldn't survive the changes with the meteorite. So opposable thumbs is something that makes me fitter. So that's what we're going to look at in today's activity. Is we're going to look at how does having opposable thumbs benefit me, or does it? That's what you'll find out in your activity. So normally this should be a really short, really quick activity, and you may find that it is. And normally, if we were in a classroom, I would do more. I would lecture more or something like that. So some of you may find that this activity is kind of short. But because of this whole digital challenge, that's all you're going to have to do. So this could be a short activity. Part of the other reason is normally I would have all of this stuff set up for you. So to save time, I would have gathered up what you need for this lab. So you may have to spend some time looking in your house to gather up some of the stuff. So when you get the lab, the first thing you need to do is look at the materials and gather up what you need. One thing on this lab, if you don't have something in that that the lab calls for, find a substitute. It's the specific materials is not so important as trying to do the activity. So, for example, like the first item is a zip top bag. So it's like a sandwich bag where you would slide the slider and to open and close the sandwich bag. If you don't happen to have that, here. So your Coke bottle. It doesn't have to be Coke. It could be a water bottle or something with the twist. So it could either be a zip tie or a twist. Just something so that the material itself is not as important as just trying to do the activity. So the first thing you need to gather is a zip top, a baggie, or a drink bottle. Then you need a book. The other thing, it says clay. Now I know not everybody has clay. So all it needs to be is just something that you could take and divide into smaller pieces. So if you have some kind of, in the lab I said squishy, something that you can take and separate into smaller pieces. If you don't have like a gob of something that you can pull apart, you can use macaroni, you could use rice, just something that you can divide into smaller pieces. And if you're having trouble with that, just get in contact with me and we'll find a workaround. The next thing is a fork and a knife. Now before you start using mom and dad's utensils, ask them first. Make sure you don't need to be using their good silverware to do this activity, because all you need is, again, something to help divide, whether you're cutting clay or separating macaroni or rice. So you don't want to use a good steak knife or the good utensils. So it doesn't need to be sharp. So if they let you use a butter knife, that's fine. And Another alternative instead of a knife is use a pencil. Again, just use a pencil. If you got a bunch of rice, just use the pencil to separate the rice or to split the clay ball. So again, just adapt. It's more about the doing the motion than exactly whether you're doing rice, macaroni, clay, all of that stuff. You'll need a piece of paper, some scissors. The last thing is tape. So some people, may have a disposable tape dispenser. If you don't have that, just try to make do as best you can. If you again, it's more about the motion. The pressing down against the blades to pull off a piece of tape. So that just try to you can get creative with the substitute. If you absolutely can't find anything, don't worry about it. Just in the answer, just make a note to me that you didn't have a tape dispenser and you couldn't find a substitute. It's not the end of the world. So what are you going to do in this activity? So you're going to need a second person. You can do it yourself if you want, but if you have a sibling or a parent that you want to do the activity with, because basically what you're going to do is there's a list of activities and you're going to time yourself doing the activity. So you could, if you just want to work by yourself, you could start a stopwatch and then do the activity and stop it yourself, or you could have a family member time you. So what you're going to do is there's a list of about 5 activities that you have to do. So you time yourself using all 5 fingers, and you time yourself doing that. Then what you want to do is figure a way to eliminate your thumb. So if you have a piece of tape, just tape your thumb to your next finger. It doesn't have to be very complicated, just a couple pieces of tape. The whole reason is we just don't want you to use your finger. So if you don't have tape, you can get a piece of string and wrap around just so that you're not using your thumbs to do the activity. So basically just think of you have 4 fingers. So if you're real good, you can force yourself not to use your thumb, or just because you're so used to using your thumb, even if you're trying to tell yourself not to, you'll naturally use it. So try to do the activity with just your 4 fingers. So that's basically what the lab is. That's all it is. Then there's I think like 4 or 5 questions, and all of that is on the Google form that I've sent you. It asks you to record your times. Again, like I said in the lab directions, it's not a race, so it's not a success or failure based on how long it takes. What we really want you to do is think about the activity. Is it hard to do without your thumb? Notice the times. There is no right answer with whether you finish it in 10 seconds or 5 seconds, but pay attention to how long does it take to do with your thumb, how long does it take to do after, and just think about, was that easy, was it hard, and that's the important takeaway from this lab. Is we're thinking about, does having this thumb give us an advantage? What kind of things are we able to do with our thumbs that other animals can't? And does that help us succeed? Is it a good thing? So answer the questions in the Google form. Again, I'll be on the chat all day. We'll probably later in the week, I'll probably do some a live a Google Hangout. The fancy term is synchronous, which just means at the same time, so that we can, if you have other questions, you could ask me live and I could answer, and we could have a chat if we want. So So the requirement from the school is that I have 2 of those a week. So basically, when I'm monitoring the chat, that covers that requirement. But you know, some things can't be answered in just text and in a message, and it's easier if we chat with each other. So I'll have some opportunities, and I'll let you know about that once I have all of that stuff set up. So there'll be opportunities, or you're always welcome to invite me to a video chat if you want. As long as I'm monitoring the chat, and if you're doing something and you have a question, just send me a message, and I'm willing to chat with you anytime during the school day. Okay, that's all I have, and again, message me if you have any questions, and this is Mr. Walk signing out.